we established pretty early on that Saddam was not directly linked to 9/11. What he was linked to, though, was a Middle East that was chaotic, volatile. He was linked to terrorists, not necessarily al-Qaeda, but to terrorists. He had used weapons of mass destruction before. He was still shooting at our aircraft when we were trying to patrol the so-called no-fly zones to keep his forces on the ground. He tried to assassinate George H.W. Bush. He put 400,000 of his people in mass graves. There were 16 Security Council resolutions against him. President Bush said, we cannot let this threat materialize. And when we learned through our intelligence, which turned out not to be entirely correct, that he had reconstituted, or they believed he'd reconstituted his biological and chemical weapons and was perhaps as little as a year from a nuclear device, we thought we have to act. But nobody wants to go to war. What you want to do is to force him out by a kind of international pressure. We frankly didn't get enough international pressure, and we had to take him out by military force. And I'll tell you, Steve, I'm glad we did, because today we are talking about an Iranian nuclear program. Can you imagine if we were talking about an arms race between Saddam Hussein's Iraq and Ahmadinejad's Iran? And that would have been a very strong likelihood.
And again, right off the front pages of the paper today, you've got the IAEA report that's about to be released that apparently shows that Iran is either closer to or has the nuclear weapon capability just over the horizon. And yet it's the same kind of debate. Do you stop it before they move ahead? You've made it clear that we should do whatever it takes to stop them from getting nukes. Is the world community there? And do you think Israel will act on their own if we don't help?
Well, the very fact that we talk about an Israeli unilateral action says how serious this problem really is. Obviously, there would be unintended consequences from military action against Iran. But I have to say it's a little bit déjà vu all over again. I was sitting there looking at the Russians and the Chinese say, well, let's not do anything that will back the Iranians into a corner. Well, you have to now back the Iranians into a corner, and you have to back them into the corner with as many options as you possibly can put on the table, including the fact that the president should never take the military option off the table. I believe we've still got time with the Iranian program because, frankly, the program's had some difficulties, and we ought to be doing everything we can to make it really hard for them and ultimately to bring that regime down.
There's a lot of talk of what happens if Israel launches a strike. And obviously they've got their facilities are moved around. They're more hardened. They've got things divided up where it makes it a little bit harder. But the Israelis took out the Syrian nuclear facility, and there was no backlash. There was no assault on Israel. Would this be different, or would we see the same thing after the strike is done?
I think we have to assume that this would be different because, first of all, I think it's well understood that a lot of things are around population centers like Tehran. So this would be pretty nasty.
They put it in a place that
puts people at risk. And by the way, terrorists do that. They like to embed in apartment buildings. They like to have so-called human shields. Well, this is one large human shield in the fact that it's all that Tehran is at risk. It's also the case that some have worried, and a lot of my Iranian expert friends worry, that you might actually strengthen the regime. And the Iranians are very proud people, and that an attack on Iran could actually strengthen the regime with a population that it has currently lost. It right now has no legitimacy. So these are hard decisions. I know they're being considered and looked at inside the administration. They have to be doing that. But it's really a lesson to the international community. Get tough on Iran now, and maybe we can avoid military action.
Ahmadinejad, unlike Assad, has not threatened Israel in the direct way of, I want to wipe him off the map. And, oh, by the way, if I get a second nuke, I'm coming after the U.S. He's been much more vile in his rhetoric than Assad ever was.
Yes, he's been much more vile than Assad. And he's a little on the crazier side as well. So I think we really do have to worry about Iran. And Iran is also the poster child for state sponsorship of terrorism. They sponsor Hezbollah. They sponsor the really bad Hamas. They make trouble for us in Iraq. And one thing that we could do, and it's unfortunate that our forces are coming home from Iraq totally, because you could put a lot of pressure on the Iranians in Iraq where they try to operate in the south.